In today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my expectations for the Montreal Canadiens heading into next season. Now, last year was a pretty rough season for the Montreal Canadiens, and I don't really see it getting better next year, especially now that we learned Shea Weber is going to be out long term, and we probably won't see much of him next season. They finished with a record of 29, 40, and 13, 6th in the Atlantic Division, only ahead of the Ottawa Senators and the Buffalo Sabres. Their leading point scorer was Brendan Gallagher with 54 points, and 54 points, that's way too low for a leading scorer. Usually, even if you're a bad team, you have guys up there in the 60s. And their leading goal scorer was Brendan Gallagher with 31, and that was a pretty good sign, as we didn't know Brendan Gallagher was a guy who could score 31 goals, but that was pretty much the lone bright spot in the season of the Montreal Canadiens last year. Carey Price has been struggling to stay healthy. Jonathan Drouin hasn't really panned out and been that number one center that they really needed him to be when they traded Sergachev for him. But they did draft Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and they are really relying on him to come in and be that game-changing center that they needed. I don't see him making the lineup next year, but in the coming years, I definitely think he's going to be a pretty good player. A lot of people are talking about that draft pick as a risk, but I do see him becoming a pretty solid NHL player and being a really good center. Montreal made a good amount of moves this offseason. The big one was trading Galchenyuk for Max Domi, and that was a high-risk move, but I definitely think Max Domi can bring a little bit of energy to this team and have a better season than he's had so far with the Arizona Coyotes. They also signed Thomas Plekanec, brought him back after they traded him to the Toronto Maple Leafs, traded for Joel Armia, and they also signed Detroit Red Wings defenseman Xavier Ouellet. I'm a big fan of Joel Armia. I think he can bring a lot to their bottom six. I think Max Domi is going to be a pretty decent player in their top six, and obviously Plekanec, I can definitely see him playing on a line with probably Armia on the third or fourth line, and Xavier Ouellet is probably a defenseman who's going to come in when someone's injured. If he has a good training camp, he might make the lineup. He did play the majority of his season with the Detroit Red Wings and not Grand Rapids, but he was scratched on some nights, and I'm not really sure if he's a reliable top six defenseman. It's going to be interesting to see how they use him, but the lineup for the Montreal Canadiens next year really is wide open, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for guys like Max Domi and Joel Armia to have breakout seasons. I like the move bringing Plekanec back. Obviously, I think he's going to retire a Canadian. He's going to be good to really teach the players the way and teach the young guys. I think he's going to be good for Jesperi Kotkaniemi if he does get any time speaking with him or training with him. But like I said, I don't really see Kotkaniemi making the lineup next season. But Montreal does have an interesting team, and all in all, I think they had a decent offseason, but that trade, Domi for Galchenyuk, really could go either way. Now taking a look at my lineup predictions for the Montreal Canadiens heading into next season now. Don't go freaking out over these lines because I'm not really a huge fan of the Canadiens. I don't follow them too much. I kind of just used roster resource and looked at their best players by position and kind of threw lines together. These obviously aren't going to be the exact lines heading into next season, but I think it could look similar to this. I think the first line will be Pacioretty, Drouin, and Gallagher. I'm hoping Pacioretty can have a full healthy season, but it is up in the air on if he will even be with the Montreal Canadiens next year, as he's been in trade rumors, it seems forever now, but I really do hope Jonathan Drouin can have a breakout year and score around 65 to 70 points. I think that would be huge for the Montreal Canadiens, and it would be a big confidence boost for Drouin, that is for sure. Second line, Domi, Philip Deneau, and Artturi Lehkonen. And I'm not sure if Philip Deneau and Lehkonen are top six forwards just yet. I am a fan of Artturi Lehkonen, and I definitely think he can have a pretty solid breakout season. Philip Deneau just re-signed. I don't know if he's good enough to be a second-line center. I would really think of him more as a third-line guy. But obviously, when you're talking about a rebuilding team, they're not going to have the perfect lineup. Third line, Paul Byron, De La Rose, and Hugh Dunn. I do like Paul Byron. I think he's capable of 20 goals. He's a very fast guy, but I don't really think he can do too much in that top six. That's why I have him down on the third line with De La Rose and Hudon. I definitely think Hudon or Hudon or Hudon, I don't really know how to say his name, but I definitely think that he can put up a good amount of points, as he looked really good in the games that he did play for the Montreal Canadiens last season. So I definitely think he was a bright spot last year, and hopefully he can continue that into next season. Then the fourth line, Delorier, Plekanec, and Armia, and I really do like that fourth line actually. Delorier, watching the games Detroit versus Montreal, I hated him. He always scored goals against Detroit, it seems. He's good net front presence and a good checking forward, and all in all, just a really good bottom six guy that brings some grit to your lineup. And then Thomas Plekanec, obviously, he's a great defensive forward, and he can go on the third or fourth line. And then Joel Armia, who I definitely think could move up, maybe even to that second line where Lehkonen is if he does play really well, as he is still young, but I think he's more suited for a bottom six role. So the lineup doesn't look all that good. They don't really have the firepower or the depth, but obviously with a rebuilding team, you don't really expect that. So it looks interesting. It really is wide open, and hopefully some of these players can move in the right direction next season. Now taking a look at their defense core, and this is kind of where it gets iffy, especially now that we learned that Shea Weber won't be starting the season with the Montreal Canadiens. Also, the forward Andrew Shaw will not be playing the majority of next season, which is also a pretty big hit to the team. The top pairing, I see it being Carl Alzner and Jeff Petrie. Now, Jeff Petrie actually did have a pretty good season last year. He put up a good amount of points, so that was another kind of bright spot, I guess, for the Canadiens last year. So I see the top pairing being Alzner and Petrie, but I definitely think Victor Mete can bump down Carl Alzner because I think he's going to be a fantastic defenseman, and he's one of the young defensemen that they have going for them. And I have him on the second pairing with Jordy Ben. Now, Jordy Ben I really don't see as a top four defenseman, which, I mean, obviously a rebuilding team, you're not going to have the perfect lineup. If Shea Weber was in there, I don't think the top four would be all that bad. And then you have David Schlemko and Noah Juleson, and I don't know if I see Juleson being an NHL defenseman just yet. Hopefully he can step in the right direction next year and have a pretty good season, but all in all, I don't think the defense score is looking very good, as obviously that Shea Weber injury is a huge hit to this. And then in goal, you have Carey Price and Antti Niemi, and that will be huge for the Canadiens if Carey Price can stay healthy next season, and if he can have a good year. Obviously, his save percentage was under 900 last season, and from Carey Price, you definitely expect more, as he's only about 31, I believe, years old, or 32. I don't see him being really on the decline of his career just yet. I think he can still do a lot and have a couple more good years left in him, but obviously I think Antti Niemi is a pretty solid backup, so when healthy, I think that is a really good tandem in net, but the defense score isn't looking that good. Now taking a look at my player stats predictions for the Montreal Canadiens next season, and remember, take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, these players aren't all going to play in all 82 games. That would just be absolutely insane if they did, and these are kind of just speculation and kind of going off their points per 82 games, in my opinion, so don't take this too seriously. This is kind of just my speculation. You guys can let me know where you think these players will be points-wise next year, but I have Jonathan Drouin leading the team in points if he were to play in all 82 games. 31 goals and 42 assists for 73 points, and I think that would be huge for the Canadiens. It would definitely be a sigh of relief, as you're getting something for that Sergachev trade. I definitely think Drouin has all the potential in the world still, and he's still a young guy who can really tap into that, in my opinion. Then I have Max Pacioretty, 34 goals and 32 assists for 66 points. I definitely think he's still more than capable of scoring 30 plus goals. He didn't really have the best season last year, but he did only play in 60 plus games instead of all 82, but definitely if he is to stay healthy, I definitely think he's still capable of 60 plus points and most definitely 30 plus goals. Then I have Brendan Gallagher, 29 goals and 34 assists for 63 points. I don't know if I see Gallagher scoring 30 plus goals again. I think that was kind of a career year goals wise, but I definitely think he's still capable of 60 plus points. Then I have Max Domi, and then 17 goals, 39 assists for him, 56 points, and which would be a really good year, as obviously he only had 9 goals last season and like 5 of them were on the empty net or something. So 17 goals would be pretty good for Max Domi, and definitely 56 points would be a good sign, as obviously you gave away Alex Galchenyuk, and a lot of Canadiens fans don't know about that move, and it is kind of questionable. But if Max Domi is to have a good season, I definitely think people won't still be talking about how dumb Marc Bergevin is for making that trade, Galchenyuk for Max Domi. Then I have Artturi Lehkonen, 18 goals and 31 assists for 49 points, and I think that would be a pretty good sign, because I think he's a great young player. I'm not sure if he'll ever really be a staple in a team's top 6. I think of him more as a third line scoring forward, but definitely if someone is to go down with injury or you're looking for chemistry in a lineup, I think he can be a top 6 forward on some teams and put up a decent amount of points. I don't think 49 will be the most he'll ever get in his career. I think he is capable of 50 plus someday. Then I have Paul Byron, 82 games, 21 goals, and 22 assists for 43 points. I think Paul Byron, with his speed and skill, I still think definitely capable of 20 plus goals, and then 22 assists for 43 points. So those are kind of the top 6 scores that I see happening for the Canadiens if everyone is to stay healthy next year. Now, taking a look at my final expectations for the Montreal Canadiens next season, I don't really see them getting any better, and I don't see them getting all that worse, but definitely a little bit of a step back. 27, 46, and 9 is kind of what I see their record being around. 7th in the Atlantic Division, only being ahead of the Ottawa Senators. Have their leading point scorer, you guys seen that in the player stats predictions, Jonathan Drouin with 73 points and Pacioretty with 34 goals. if Shea Weber wasn't going to be injured and if Carey Price could have a season like we know he's capable of, maybe they could push for a wild card spot, but I just really don't see it. But I don't think it would be too bad for this team to try to tank and maybe get a guy like Jack Hughes, because that is a franchise center in my opinion, and that's something this team needs in the worst way. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and if he does make the team. I've seen some articles that they are impressed with what they've seen from him at training camp, but I really hope they don't rush him and throw him into a top 6 center position right away, because I think that could put a damper on his potential. But those are just kind of my overall expectations for the Montreal Canadiens next year. So that is going to wrap up the video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Make sure you let me know down in the comment section who you guys think are going to be the standout players for the Montreal Canadiens next year, and where you think they're going to finish in the standings, and just your overall expectations for the team next year. I'm very curious to hear, especially from a Canadiens fan perspective. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.